those words really, really triggered me. They talked about the realization being the end of hope. For me, hope was like a lifeline, that I was holding on to, clinging on to my entire life. It was my coping mechanism. And I remember feeling like this person wanted to take that lifeline away from me. Like, I might as well, like, if I can't have hope, I might as well be dead. I mean, it was this powerful. Hi everyone, and welcome to new subscribers to the channel. Thanks so much for joining me in my conversations and explorations on all things awakening and awakening process, regardless of where we're at in this journey. And as always, at the start, I'd like to ask that if you enjoyed the videos and you'd like to support the channel, then please remember to like the video and to subscribe, and also share what resonates with you in the comments. It really helps the channel be more visible to people who are looking for these kinds of conversations and explorations, and I really do appreciate your support. Cheers! I got my Christmassy mug out. So today I wanted to talk about one of those blissless aspects of the awakening process, one that's still rarely talked about, and yet so many people hit this point in their journey at some point, and that's hopelessness. And I know that because I've been there myself, and I hear from people, whether this is during my one-on-one sessions or in the emails that I received, that this is something that so many people are dealing with right now, or at least have dealt, like I said, at one point in this journey. Hopelessness, as bleak as it sounds or as scary as it sounds, is actually a very common and very important part of the awakening process. And as always, I can talk a little bit about it from my own experiences. Actually, as I was setting things up to record this video, I actually remembered when I was once listening to someone talking about the realization, and I really enjoyed listening to this person, because it was so clear to me that they were speaking from direct experience and that they have seen something that I haven't seen yet. And even though I had trouble grasping some of the things that they were talking about, for the most part, I was just really resonating and connecting to what was sort of behind their words. Until one day, they talked about the realization being the end of hope. And as soon as I heard that, I switched off, and I actually still can't remember the details of what else they said about that. But I do remember how angry I felt. Those words really, really triggered me. And at that point, I was suffering, and I was already kind of looking for answers as to why I was still suffering so much after this profound insight, the profound awakening that I had years earlier. So when that person talked about the end of hope, I can see now how, for me, hope was like a lifeline, that I was holding on to, clinging on to my entire life. It was my coping mechanism. And I remember feeling like this person wanted to take that lifeline away from me. Like, I might as well, like, if I can't have hope, I might as well be dead. I mean, it was this powerful. And it was not until after the awakening of the heart and the gut, when so much of the unconscious became conscious, and I could see for the first time how hope was such a powerful coping mechanism, especially when I was growing up. Because as a child, I was growing up in circumstances that made me feel mostly afraid, and there was a lot of unpredictability and feeling incredibly alone in this world. And so I really, really didn't like the reality of my circumstances. So I was creating these sort of stories and fantasies that I could kind of go to and lose myself in, because that was just a better reality to the one that I was experiencing. And I remember making up some stories and sharing them with kids in the kindergarten as though they were real. And I was telling them about all the amazing places I've been to and about all the amazing things I've seen. And of course, none of that was true. But at least for some time, I got to live in the kind of reality that was enjoyable, that was fun, that was colorful, that was basically a complete contrast to the reality that I was actually living at the time. So, when I talk about hope, I completely understand the power of hope. I actually see I see myself as that kid with a lot of compassion, and in many ways I'm kind of grateful that those fantasies and those stories were available, and it actually points to like this incredible power of the mind, and how at the time it was really helpful and it helped me deal with my circumstances. But what I realized and saw for the first time after the awakening of the heart and the gut was how I was actually doing the exact same thing throughout my teenage years and right up to my adulthood, where basically I had this idea, this belief that I needed to achieve things and have certain things by certain time, and all those things look really important, and a lot of who I thought I needed to be or what I thought I needed to have or to achieve was really driven by a profound sense of unworthiness and the belief that that this was how I was going to earn praise, this was how I was going to earn love. And the standard when it comes to what I was meant to achieve, who I was meant to be, was set really, really high. It wasn't just about doing some interesting things or achieving something. It had to be something extraordinary. I had to stand out in some way, and only then would I feel that I was enough, and only then maybe I would earn praise and validation and the love that I was craving. So the standard was really high, and I was failing to live up to that ideal, to live up to that standard. And so I often felt like failure, like I was never going to amount to anything. And that continued for a really, really long time, even after the first awakening, even after I knew that I was not my thoughts. And even when I knew that there was absolutely nothing on the outside that could sort of fill the void that I felt on the inside, It was actually quite astounding to see for the first time after the awakening of the heart and the gut, how this hope was actually perpetuating so much suffering, because every time I was out of the fantasy world where I would be that person that I thought I needed to be, where I would have the things that I thought I wanted or needed to have, and so on, and I would be back to the reality of what was, there was just such a disappointment with myself, and all kinds of insecurities would come up to the surface, and I would just feel like an utter failure. It felt so horrible to feel all this. I would do anything not to feel that. And so hope was the coping mechanism. So every time I felt that disparity, every time those feelings would be resurfacing, I would create another fantasy. I would hope for something better, different, where one day I would finally get to be where I thought I wanted to be and have the things that I wanted to have, and so on. So you can see that it was like a loop, it was like a constant loop, because the fantasy, obviously, I could only live in the fantasy for a while, and it will make me feel better for a while and maybe pumped up to, try something new, do something different, and so on. But it would never last. It just would never last. So for me, the awakening of the heart and the gut, it just illuminated for the first time all kinds of coping mechanisms that I had throughout my life but wasn't aware of. And when I saw for the first time how having hope and constantly looking for a better, different reality or a better, different version of myself was actually one of those coping mechanisms. So it was the emotional breakdown that I experienced at some point that was my first profound experience of hopelessness. And that hopelessness was very much tied to a profound sense of helplessness. And then the awakening of the heart and the gut, together, they sort of, all those experiences forced me back into my body and to be for the first time with all those things that I would normally hope my way out of. And as I have gone through all those other stages, it was becoming increasingly clear that this constant hoping for a different, better reality, for something other than what's right here, and all the ways to basically mitigate the experience, control the experience, run away from what I didn't want to feel or experience, as understandable as it is, but it was precisely that was constantly perpetuating the suffering. So that suffering began to subside the moment the reality of what is was finally met. And the reason why hopelessness can feel so bleak and so scary, and honestly for me it was like I might as well be dead. Like if you take the hope away from me, I what's the point? What's the point of living? But the reason why this is such an important part of the process is precisely because finally all the strategies and all the coping mechanisms that had their place, and all the strategies and all the things that we've been used to doing to basically avoid being with what is, they just no longer work. And the way this is going to come about is going to be different to different people. Sometimes it's the mind that's been so busy that it finally exhausts itself, right? And you can't even rely on the mind to take you away from the pain that you're experiencing, or from grief, or from the shame or guilt that are resurfacing, and so on. Some people, it will be the physical body that will just say, I've had it, I've had enough. And there is some kind of either chronic condition or some kind of illness that strikes, that basically forces us to deal with whatever is arising in our experience, no matter how unpleasant, no matter how scary or challenging. That hopelessness will be experienced just at the very end of the dissolution of any kind of sense of I as a separate solid someone who's in charge. That sense of hopelessness can also hit when we realize that a particular shift or insight were actually hiding places, that it was just like another new identity that the I wrapped itself around, whether it's emptiness or presence or I amness or thingness. All of it has to go now. Even the so-called transcendent bit becomes this kind of a lifeline that the I is sort of clinging on to perpetuate this illusion of it being something solid. So again, it will happen differently to different people at different stages of the journey. So that sense of hopelessness is simply the end of trying to mitigate and control the experience. It's simply it's the end of running away. It's the end of hiding. It's simply an invitation to now meet whatever is arising in our experience exactly as it is. At first, when that experience is finally fully met, and we don't run away for the first time, we're not trying to numb it in any way, to distract ourselves from it. It's going to be a bit challenging, but the more we stay with it, the more there's this intimacy with the moment, is the intimacy with what's arising. And the longer we stay with that intimacy, that's when that sense of separation starts to dissolve. And there is simply no separation between the I and the experience. And then when we take it even farther, then even that distinction between an I and any kind of experience is completely dissolved. So then there's just an experience. There's just a inconceivable mystery that is the reality with capital R. It makes hope and it makes any kind of coping mechanism completely redundant, because there simply is no resistance anymore towards arising in the experience. There's no one there to try to mitigate or control the experience. So, as bleak, as scary as hopelessness may sound or feel like, I hope I managed to show that this is actually a really, really important part of the process. This is such an incredible invitation to simply meet what is, and an invitation to stop running from ourselves.